Tacitus is today known as one of the greatest historians of ancient Rome. One of his earliest surviving works is the Germania, a short but powerful account which has long fascinated historians. The work is a description of a people, the Germanic tribes living beyond the Rhine and the upper Danube, the boundaries of the Roman Empire in Western Europe. For the Romans, the Germans were a fierce, proud and warlike people, to be feared and respected. But Tacitus's account is not negative. Rather, the historian expresses his admiration for the Germans and sees in them many of the virtues that his own people, the Romans, had lost. The Germania represents one of our earliest glimpses into the world of the Germanic peoples, who would spread across Europe and greatly impact the history of the Western world. But it's also a glimpse into the mind of one of ancient Rome's greatest writers, revealing his beliefs, perspectives, and worldview. Join us as we learn more, and remember, there's no greater teacher than history.
This is J. Stephen Roberts, founder of Real Crusades History. I want to invite you to explore King Richard the Lionheart, Saladin, and the epic events of the Third Crusade like never before. In my historical novel, Richard and Saladin, the Lion and the Eagle, Saladin has conquered Jerusalem. In response, Richard the Lionheart leads an army to the distant east. Richard's dedication to God drives him in a ferocious struggle with Saladin's legions. Among Richard's knights is Baldwin de Coudray, eager to fight for Jerusalem. But the war tests Baldwin's convictions when he encounters Stephanie de Saint-Bertain, a young noblewoman who has suffered enslavement by the enemy. Meanwhile, Saladin wonders if he can trust his own brother, the general Ala-Adil, who harbors his own ambitions to rule. The Lion and the Eagle holds close to the primary source material for the historical events. Here is all the intensity of King Richard's crusade, with riveting, complex characters, vivid battle scenes, and absorbing intrigue. Click the link in the description or the comments below to get a copy today. Available in paperback and Kindle. And now, on with today's topic.
In 58 BC, Julius Caesar began a series of military expeditions into Gaul, which would eventually result in the Roman conquest of the whole of Transalpine Gaul up to the Rhine and the English Channel. The Gauls, a Celtic people, were proud and defiant in the face of Rome's invasion. They put up a titanic struggle against Roman rule, yet Caesar felt confident in Rome's ability to subdue and even absorb this population. He had another opinion entirely of the people beyond the Rhine, the Germans. These tribes he regarded as far too fierce to ever be conquered. For Caesar, Roman policy must be to secure the Rhine as the natural frontier of the empire, holding the tribes of Germania at bay. But Julius Caesar's great-nephew and successor, Caesar Augustus, would later set out to extend the empire far beyond the frontiers imagined by his uncle. In 12 BC, Roman armies began to penetrate the region beyond the Rhine. However, in AD 9, the Roman general Varus was ambushed in the Teutoburg forest by a Germanic force commanded by Arminius, a chieftain of the Cherusci tribe who'd risen to lead the combined Germanic peoples in their struggle against Roman imperialism. The battle that followed would immortalize the name Arminius, as he and his Germans annihilated the Romans in one of the worst military disasters in the empire's history. It seems Caesar's old wisdom had been confirmed. The plan to subdue Germania was abandoned forever by the Romans. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was one of the most decisive battles in history. It is largely the reason that today German is spoken in Germany, rather than a Latin-based language as is spoken in France or Spain. In his day, Tacitus was one of the leading orators of Rome. His histories and annals are masterpieces of Latin literature. His Germania is an ethnography, part of the Roman tradition of describing and analyzing foreign peoples. His interest wasn't mere curiosity, but the contemplation of several issues, especially, as Harold Mattingly notes, Roman imperialism and its failures, freedom and its proper limits, civilization and morality. Tacitus concludes that the Germans resist Roman rule because of their love of freedom. writing,
"The freedom of Germania is a deadlier enemy than the despotism of Arsaces."
However, Tacitus writes that the Germans take freedom too far, which results in a weakness. The German refuses to endure any restraints. He arrives at assemblies whenever he chooses, and his leaders must rely on persuasion and charisma rather than any formal command structure. Thus, for Tacitus, the Germans are incapable of the discipline that the Romans prized in their own society. Tacitus begins by defining the boundaries of the German homeland, writing,
"Germania is separated from the Gauls and from the Reti and Pannoni by the Rhine and Danube rivers, from the Sarmatians and Dacians by the barriers of mutual fear or mountain ranges."
He stresses the connectedness of the Germani to their territory.
The Germani themselves, I'm inclined to think, are natives of the land, and very little affected by immigration or friendly interaction with other nations.
He describes Germania as a place of
unlovely scenery and bitter climate, dreary to inhabit,
and views this as a reason why they have remained isolated in their territory. The Germans record their history orally through songs. They sing the praises of Hercules and other heroes. From a song called Baratus,
they kindle their courage, and from the singing itself, they forecast the result of the coming battle. I accept the view,
writes Tacitus,
that the Germani have never been tainted by intermarriage with other nations, and stand out as a people distinctive, pure, and unique of its kind. Hence the physical type, if one may generalize about so vast a population, is everywhere the same. Wild blue eyes, reddish hair, and huge frames that excel only in violent effort. They have no corresponding power to endure hard work and exertion, and little capacity to bear thirst and heat, but their climate and soil have taught them to bear cold and hunger. As for their leaders, it is their example rather than their authority that wins them special admiration. Their energy, their distinction, or their presence in the front of the line. Moreover, no one is allowed to punish, to fetter, or even to flog. A particularly powerful incitement to valor is the fact that not chance nor the accident of mustering makes the troop or wedge, but family and friendship. A man's dearest possessions are close at hand. He can hear nearby the laments of his women and the wails of his children. These are the witnesses that a man reverences most. To them, he looks for his highest praise. The men take their wounds to their mothers and wives, who are not afraid of counting and examining the blows, and bring food and encouragement to those fighting.
Tacitus describes the important role of women in Germanic society.
Armies wavering and even on the point of collapse have been restored by the steadfast pleas of the women, who bared their breasts and described how close they were to enslavement, a fate that the men fear more keenly for their women than for themselves.
By baring their breasts, the Germanic women essentially were saying, "Don't let this body become the property of our enemies." The dishonor of enslavement was intolerable to all warrior peoples, such as the ancient Germans, and they often preferred death to captivity. Tacitus also describes the religious traditions of the Germanic tribes, saying that they prefer not to imprison their gods in temples, but rather
consecrate woods and groves, and they call by the names of gods the hidden presence that they see only by the eye of reverence.
Tacitus describes the Germanic form of government, which is by council among the men of the community. Tacitus criticizes it as a defect of their freedom, that the men take their time in gathering rather than assembling all at once on being ordered. Once all men are gathered, they take their seats, each man bearing his weapons as a mark of his rank as a free warrior. Then the king, leading men or other important members of the community, offer their counsel, and it is their eloquence rather than their ability to compel that secures the cooperation of the other men.
If a proposal displeases them, the men roar out their dissent. If they approve, they clash their spears. no form of approval can carry more honor than praise expressed by arms.
We will continue to explore Tacitus's writings on the ancient Germans in a future episode, right here on Real Crusades History. For now, check out our video on Charles Martel, a descendant of the men described by Tacitus, who would halt the Arab expansion in its tracks at the Battle of Tours in 732. The video is linked on your screen right now. Please subscribe to this channel, see the link in the description to follow us on Patreon, and check out my latest book, Richard and Saladin, The Lion and the Eagle, a novel of the Third Crusade, linked in the description as well. Until next time, keep history alive.
Empires crashing down around us, too big to